The South African farming sector continues to create more work. The jobs numbers are looking great, but the path ahead is worrying. Today, May 12, 2026, Statistics South Africa released their quarterly labor force survey. And the broad unemployment figures for the country are not looking well. Unemployment nudged up. It's now at 32.7%. But if you take away all of the things and you zoom into agriculture and say, what's happening in the farming sector? The farming sector has done reasonably well. We now have about 960,000 people that are working in primary agriculture. That's the figure for the first quarter of 2026. You compare that to the same period a year ago, that's up 3%. From the last quarter of 2025, that's up by 1%. The increase in general is not really something that came as a surprise because the operating conditions in a number of subsectors of agriculture has generally been favorable. We've had a period of nice La Nina rains across the country. And if anyone is paying close attention on the sector and you are looking at the figures that are coming out of the grain farmers, the oil seeds, the fruits, vegetables, nuts, wine production, the figures have been signaling that something good is happening. The output have increased, the exports figures have increased, and that tells us then that in terms of the activity out there in the farming areas in South Africa, there's been a lot more of that, and these figures that we are seeing, the jobs numbers, are reflecting exactly that. But of course, not all is well in the farming sector. The cattle industry, particularly beef farmers and those that are in the dairy industry, they've been struggling with foot and mouth disease, which remains quite a major challenge in the country. But we are making inroads now in other areas through the vaccination, and the vaccine imports figures are increasing. We have a lot more vaccine now in the country. So there is efforts that is being made in that part. And hopefully then as the year progresses, we continue to make nice inroads on that. The other industry that has been under pressure is the pork producers. They've been struggling with the African swine fever. That's another. But you put those away and you look all of the other subsectors in the South African agricultural sector, they've been doing well. And I think they support then this increase in jobs activity that we have seen. From a provincial perspective, even if you look into this, it sort of gives you a sense of what's happening. I mean, we saw jobs gains in the Western Cape. The Western Cape is good in terms of horticulture. The Eastern Cape, Limpopo, I'm looking at this now, Free State, Northwest, those are the grains. Those are some of the provinces that actually saw jobs gains. While you saw then that others like Gauteng, they shed a bit of jobs. But in total, when we are looking at the national level, we're sitting with about 960,000 jobs in the South African farming sector, up 3% from a year ago. That's the activity that we are seeing. But when we think about the rest of the year, we may still continue to register some excellent numbers. They may not necessarily remain at these levels or continue to increase. It will depend on what activities are underway in what quarter of the year, in what quarter of the year. But generally, I think we will be well above the long-term average, which is just around 800,000 jobs in this sector. So there will remain good activity throughout the year. But after this year, when we are thinking about next year, that's where there's a lot more risks. One, there's a financial difficulties on the farmers because of this increase in input costs, fertilizer, fuel, especially when the season starts from around October because of the war in the Middle East. The second aspect is, of course, the fact that we are looking at prospects of a return of an El Nino, which could bring drought. That's another challenge. We've also been hearing a lot and also looking at the figures from the folks that are in irrigation that the rise in electricity prices is starting to bite on some. And remember, all of our fruit and vegetables are under irrigation, and about 20% of our field crops are under irrigation. So there is this cost increase in the sector that I think is going to begin to bite for a number of folks in the current environment. And that's what worries us a lot then when we are thinking about the medium term to say what is the job activity going to look like. But of course, all of that will depend as to whether farmers increase area planting, sustain it, they reduce it, and what the weather conditions will be. But for the rest of this year, we are likely to remain with these encouraging figures that we have already seen now that Statistics South Africa released as part of the quarterly labor survey for the first quarter of 2026, which shows that the agricultural sector in South Africa has done reasonably well. We still are creating employment with about 960,000 people working in primary agriculture in the first quarter of this year.